We know by now that there's been a mass exodus, mass resignations of lawyers within the Department of Justice. And those Department of Justice lawyers who are remaining at the DOJ continue to be excoriated by federal judges across this country, federal judges increasingly saying, we will hold you in contempt for your conduct. Federal judges have had it with these DOJ lawyers, but not just with the DOJ lawyers. We're seeing a lot of decisions as well of federal judges calling out immigration law judges within the executive branch who are supposed to be impartial and who are supposed to exercise the appropriate level of discretion and follow the law at an administrative level with hearings regarding migrants. But increasingly what we've seen is the Trump regime hiring immigration judges on Twitter. On X, they're putting out ads saying, please join us with those weird memes. And they're bringing in people who really aren't qualified to be immigration judges while firing all of these other people who are qualified to be immigration judges simply so these individuals can carry out the Trump regime's very dangerous orders. And you have situations where migrants aren't even given the appropriate interpreter. And so the immigration judges are making these rulings. And again, these are not your Article 3 federal judges. And then your Article 3 federal judges are saying, you know, these executive branch immigration law judges don't even know what the hell they're doing. And they're keeping people from being released in violation of the Constitution. Let's just take a look at what's going down. And Kyle Cheney frames this case out of Minnesota appropriately. This order came out on Friday. He goes amid a torrent of sometimes shocking ICE cases. This one stands out. ICE labeled a man the worst of the worst, accused him of assaulting officers, almost killing officers, and then posting his picture on their website, the person who they accused, 2 days before the DOJ charge. And they said, this is the exact reason why we do these ICE and Gestapo kidnappings. Although the DOJ doesn't call it that, I do. The man said, you got it wrong. ICE were the aggressors. They lured me from my workplace, arrested me, and then aggressively detained me illegally. I didn't do anything wrong at all. So ICE tries to, put all their resources against this guy. They don't got all these resources. The charges are eventually dropped, but he was detained for 6 weeks, only winning release when a judge threatened to hold the administration in contempt. So after the Trump regime lost, they refused to release the guy as punishment for winning the case against the DOJ. And then even when he won the case, they kept him unlawfully detained. Judge Nelson called the situation Orwellian and shocking. Listen to these words by a federal judge from Minnesota. In conclusion, across agencies, the government's conduct with respect to petitioner has been deeply troubling. ICE agents lured him outside of his workplace, engaged in insultive conduct against him, and sent him to Texas with no legal basis as he maintains legal status that prohibits his removal. In advance of a criminal complaint or indictment against petitioner, DHS publicly announced his arrest on its website, labeled him, quote, the worst of the worst, published his photograph, accused him of assaulting law enforcement officers, all at a time when no criminal charges had been filed. 2 days later, the U.S. Attorney's Office brought criminal charges against him under seal, chose not to pursue those charges, and ultimately moved to dismiss them. The court has now dismissed the criminal charges. Petitioner's counsel attempted to determine whether his client was in criminal custody or immigration custody and had great difficulty communicating with him, while counsel for respondent failed over many days to properly respond to court orders aimed at resolving the custody question. All the while, the petitioner, the guy they arrested, remained in out-of-state detention in Texas, far removed from his family, friends, and legal counsel in Minnesota. Unable to work, unnecessarily exposed to a measles outbreak. Could it get any worse? The government could have avoided this Orwellian scenario altogether or released petitioner at various points in times, but failed to do so. Instead, petitioner spent 6 weeks in detention, and a contempt hearing was required to resolve this matter. None of this should have ever occurred. And we're hearing this across the country. A judge ordering the release of a man with lawful permanent resident status who twice won bond before an immigration court, but remained detained for 200 days because of the Trump regime's use of a previously little used automatic stay. You have Judge Newman in Maine ordering the release of a man who was arrested by immigration authorities after placing an emergency call to help someone attempting suicide. On February 18, 2026, Mr. Wu was among a group of individuals at a home in Maine who called emergency services to assist a person attempting suicide. Upon arrival, the local police requested Wu's identification. Despite the life-saving nature of the call, once Mr. Wu's notification status was disclosed, police chose to contact the U.S. Border Patrol, who subsequently took Mr. Wu into custody, characterizing him as a flight risk based on an alleged failure to update his address. And then federal judges now attacking these immigration judges. For example, a Trump-appointed judge had the following to say: the bond hearing has indications of predetermined outcome. Well, this is from the Obama appointee. I'll show you what the Trump appointee said in a moment. The bond hearing has indications of a predetermined outcome, Harpool, an Obama appointee, wrote. The immigration judge's order enumerates that petitioner has been in the U.S. for 9 years, has not missed a court hearing, has family in the U.S., owns a home and operates a business in the U.S. The immigration judge's determination regarding flight risk is clearly untethered by the facts and any logical conclusion to be determined from the facts. And then you have another case involving a Trump-appointed judge, where the Trump-appointed judge calls out the immigration judges as well for doing the same thing. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds Substack, and Talking Feds podcast. Harry, we're talking about human beings here. Human beings who have been kidnapped by our government, who have been charged falsely with things they never do, have been defamed publicly, and the remaining people who are at the DOJ are out there spewing these lies until judges are forced to say, we're going to hold you in contempt. And then finally, the DOJ does the right thing up until the last moment before a contempt order issues. Harry, break it all down for us. You were a leader in the DOJ. This must drive you just crazy.
Let's start with this whole immigration judge thing. You know, this is part and parcel of the agency. These are administrative judges. They work for ICE. And while they should have independence, as you've mentioned, who knows what corner they've just been brought in on just to have some warm bodies. They're completely, this is part and parcel of the crisis at DOJ and in the executive branch. But this effort is wholesale and methodical. So a scenario like the sort you just read would seem like an incredible concatenation of errors if it weren't for the fact that it happens again and again, no apologies ever issued. The basic game here is ICE. And this is why they are continually ignoring court orders in this issue about whether you get to be at liberty to make your claims of whatever you might have for example, for asylum until the hearing comes. And what they want is to just grab them, detain them, and then they are in control. And this transfer to Texas with no process, no release, no nothing. That's happening again and again. We've seen, you and I have talked about before, situations where they just, we have to release them. Okay. And they just leave them on the street with no ID and the like. It's very hard to escape the conclusion that this is a sort of homegrown impromptu punishment on the part of this bullying agency that is being told again and again by courts, stand down, do the right thing. It is a constitution here that you are ignoring. And they somehow duck and bob and weave and lose things. And it was here just a minute ago. until, as you say, now the DOJ lawyers who stand up and say 3-4 times, I don't know what to tell you, Your Honor. Even well-meaning DOJ lawyers cannot corral these guys and make them do the right thing. They're technically the clients here, and we're going to be hearing more and more stories of how essentially ICE is giving the finger to DOJ lawyers, not to mention the entire system, and especially people that they want to deport. So here again, you have someone who it's not law. There's a existing order that says you can't deport them. So they have no authority to bring them in, detain them, but that's their game. There are these two routes. They would love to keep them in the channel for immigration, where they have all kinds of control, physical dominion, and also power. And where, by the way, this is an underexplored part to date, they are, putting them in real hellholes of detention centers, where when we do get the stories, you hear horror shows of people being in overcrowded places, sleeping next to overflowing toilets, really brutal, subhumane conditions. But that is why ICE is trying all the time. We want to keep them in this Article 1 channel. But when an Article 3 court grants a habeas corpus motion, that means they're in Article 3 land. That means federal courts. That means the Constitution, just like Judge Nelson did. And for a federal court to issue a ruling, it just follows, or it always did, like day from night, that ruling will be complied with. But it's as if they're in this foreign country, in this gulag, where even DOJ folks have trouble getting these people. 6 friggin' weeks. How in the world can something like that happen? And you can just envision week after week, ICE just saying, sorry, was here just a minute ago. Sorry, nobody's around now, etc. Completely cavalier when we are talking about, as you say, people and human lives. So 6 weeks, can't do any work, maybe loses their job. Who knows what happens with the family? How are they supposed to get back from Texas? All of this follows because they put their mitts on them and put them into this supposed deportation channel where rights are so reduced. But when you bring a habeas corpus motion in federal court and it's granted, no more of that. The ICE has to play by the rules and bring them into actual constitutional protection, and they're just not. Again and again and again and again. So you have people like Nelson. Sometimes they say this is highly troubling. Sometimes they say, "Are you kidding me?" Contempt of actual DOJ lawyers is such a remote kind of remedy for a federal court to have to rattle sabers over. But we've seen it, a dozen times in the last few weeks. There's no recourse when basically thugs, and that's who ICE is, lawless thugs, are just going to ignore things and thumb their nose both at DOJ lawyers, the ones who are trying to do the right thing, not to mention federal courts. That is the state of play. It's just not how a democracy works, but nobody in ICE, and I think in the highest levels of the government, up to and including who Kristi Noem called the real boss here, Stephen Miller, just cares even a little bit. They like throwing their weight around in this way. They are indifferent to the human consequences of people, many of whom have lived in this country for years, been good citizens, and the like.
Everybody, make sure you subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel, Talking Feds. Also subscribe to his Substack and his podcast, also called Talking Feds. Harry Litman, former top DOJ lawyer, top DOJ prosecutor in the Western District of Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us, Harry.
Hey, thank you, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.